That was yes. So that is
So
what
it's
we're
right
on
here.
That is all I have. I'll yield the floor entirely to Brad.
Eddie, I think you have to make the live stream go.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were starting the
No, sorry.
Cool.
I wonder whether we can read it.
I muted, yes. I think the room is muted.
Oh, okay, great.
Right. Okay. So there's been a lot of talk lately about rigged elections. And the truth is that there are a lot of rigged elections in this country. They are biased, trying to make it more likely for one party to win, and often this rigging is set up years in advance of the election. This is Florida. Florida was recently found challenged in court to be illegally rigging their maps to bias against some people and for some other people. And this is called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is, take some population of people. Here's a map of 40% purple people and 15% and 60% green people. Now, a simple split of this map will preserve that ratio and elect 2 purple people and 3 green people. But if you cut it a different way, you can make the minority purple win a majority of the seats by packing a sufficient number of green people into just a few districts so that they have less clout elsewhere. Alternately, you can cut it so that the purple people have a majority nowhere. They're completely shut out. And by splitting them up just right, green wins. These strategies of packing and cracking have been used dozens of times all over the country. Current estimates are that 20 or 30 seats in the House, which is as much as the partisan split in the House, is being affected by this. And it's being done in both ways, but the net is estimated to be in one way in particular. So back to Florida. This district in particular was found to be illegally packing too many people from an underrepresented minority into one district by reaching around and grabbing people from here and there, stringing together communities that weren't really one particular locality or identity region. That was Florida in 2012, but in 1812, this was Massachusetts, when Governor Elbridge Gerry signed into law this map that was drawn up into political cartoon as a monstrous salamander, and thus was born the gerrymander. It's gotten a lot worse lately. With modern data techniques and computers, you can really fine-tune your map to reach out for just exactly the right demographics to skew your map and get the best chance that your people win and those other people don't win.
I went to high school with a descendant of that Jerry. Her name was Mandy Jerry.
Good job. So if this is what you get when you use technology for evil and twist the districts tightly to get a specific outcome, what if you could use technology to create a perfectly impartial map that just tried to represent a locality or a region and not try to do any other demographic shenanigans? You might get something like this. This is what Florida would look like if you were just optimizing for compact districts. So that's pretty good. We know it's possible. Yeah?
What do you mean compact?
The definition of compact I'm going for is that you take the land area center of some district, and then you measure the distance to all of the people in that district, and you get an average distance per person to the center of their district.
Just minimizing that?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Thanks.
So, that's Florida. Let's see another example. North Carolina. This is North Carolina as of January 2015. its maps, no, actually that was just, this was January 2016, just at the start of this year. These maps were thrown out, but just before the primary was about to start. The primary season had to be pushed back a couple months so that they could draw new maps, and everyone was left in disarray, candidates and voters, because all of the maps were changing. You can see this red district in the upper right is reaching into and around 3 other districts. This pink district is one district that's pinched down as narrow as possible while reaching out to grab other populations. This is what it could be like otherwise. This is nuts. This is not representing any particular locality or region. But this is what you get when you just draw a map purely based on compactness. These maps are equal population to within 0.5%, and they are contiguous, which have always been the 2 solid things that you're required to make a legal map. So these are legally viable maps. So the last 2 were Republican gerrymanders, where they tried to skew things their way. Maryland is a Democratic gerrymander. The governor of Maryland called out for national help, saying, "President Obama, please help me solve gerrymandering in my state." And this is one of the more contorted, twisted, distorted, ridiculous maps I have seen anywhere in the country.
This is after you look for help?
No, this is this is the before.
Oh.
Well, actually, this is the current. This is what they are operating with currently in Maryland. And it's crazy. And this is my way. And it's much simpler. And, you know, if a Republican governor and, you know, if Republicans in some states and Democrats in other states can call out and say, hey, this is a problem, we need to fix this, just maybe there's actually some political impetus to fix this. So it's technically possible. I did all this on my home computer running for 6 months to solve for these maps. I have this for all of the congressional districts and state legislature maps in the country, except for 2. That's like 140 maps. It's legally viable. These are, you know, these fit the requirements for what a legally possible map is. So I think we just need to get around and doing it. I think we need a new Voting Rights Act that says, hey, all of you states, you have to do this fair. So how did I do it?
Wait.
Yeah?
So are you going to come back to the political implications of those maps, or are you just going to, like, I don't know, right now,
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm assuming, well, now I'm forgetting his name. The guy that does all the videos with stick figures and explains things.
CGP grant.
Thank you, that's the one. I'm assuming you're familiar with these videos.
Yeah.
So one of the problems with, you know, gerrymandering, like, I'm not saying that either side is doing a good job of it, but one of the other things you want to solve is not just the legally binding one, but also getting fair representation.
Uh-huh.
Does your maps try to account for that at all? To say, like, actually, I want to make sure that things are represented.
No.
And you don't think that that's a thing worth solving?
I think it's a thing worth solving in a different way. I think the question is, what is a district for? And what do we want out of our representation? I would argue that a district is for representing a locality. It is for representing a region or some group of people that likely have something in common because of where they are. Because they're in an agricultural area or a mining area or an industrial area or an urban area or something like that. And they are going to have their local representative. I think what you want is some sort of ideological representation where, you know, I want to elect someone who thinks like me. I want to elect someone who will vote for the things that I want on not necessarily region-based issues.
Well,
and this is also a very important thing that I think we should not try to solve through districting. And this is my opinion. There was a recent court case in Wisconsin that actually says otherwise, and says that the disproportionality of the elected membership of the state legislature and the US House from that state is a problem, because the elected officials are, 10% more Republican than the population is. What's up with that? Is effectively what the court case said. And so that court case is laying the ground for proportionality as a measure of, is this a good districting set? And I think what that gets to is, it doesn't matter where your representative is from. It matters if your representative thinks like your slice of the population. And what I will get to later is, there's a better way to do that. And so if I had my way, we would do both of those things. We would both have a local representative and a people who think like me representative, an ideological representative, as well as a geographical one.
Do you have any idea how often you'd have to reshape that map to reflect population changes?
Every 10 years, it's in the Constitution. Yeah.
So there's a legal requirement that population be evenly distributed?
No, that each district, whatever size it is on land, so you can see this blue district in the middle is much smaller area than, say, the big green district or the big pink district, because population is much more dense there. Each district has to have about the same number of people. Every congressional district in the country has about 700,000 people.
But compactness is not a legal requirement.
It actually is in a couple states like Florida, where the legislature ignores it anyway. They passed a law, they passed a ballot initiative in Florida that says the legislature shall make compact districts, and the legislature said, nah, we don't want to.
Is that at all rigorously defined? Or
no, they did not define which measure of compactness counted. They just used the word
ideological pretty compact.
Right. They didn't define how compact or even how to measure compact. Yeah.
What determines how many districts? We have like 20 districts and 5 districts.
Right. There's again an algorithm in the Constitution for apportionment that says, like I said, each district is approximately 700,000 people, and California counts for 33 of those, and Texas counts for 36. No, California has 53, Texas has 36, and that, based on the population of those states, works out to about 700,000. There are, 435 members of Congress, so given round-off errors, each state gets their share of those.
Who's deciding the map?
Each state legislature in general.
So it's politically influenced. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. That is, in fact, the problem. And so I am suggesting, take away the map pen, let an impartial robot do it. I have open sourced that robot. You can inspect it and make sure that it's fair. Because, yes. If you'd like to read that robot, it is about 10,000 lines of C and 4,500 lines of Java and a mess of Python gluing it together, and runs on a home computer in 6 months to solve all the maps for the whole country. And you could adjust it. You could try, well, what if we use a different definition of compactness? Or what if we, I don't know, say, I want to try really hard not to split up cities and counties and keep those together as much as possible. I'm not currently taking that into effect, but I'm just doing compactness without regard for traditional boundaries. But those traditional boundaries make things easier to administer, so maybe we should look into that.
You said that there were 2 districts that you didn't do this with. What happened to the state? The
Vermont state legislature has 400 representatives, and my system just breaks. That's too many. And it took me, it took me until a few months ago to get around to fixing Alaska. The Aleutian Islands cross -180 to 180, and I had to do some fix-up around that. Yep.
Isn't Vermont's government based off their grid of townships anyways? Or am I remembering that wrong?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it that carefully. I just know they have 400.
We might be able to just say, we can ignore Vermont. Like, yeah, do this for the rest of the country.
So the good news about having a small district is that a small district is harder to gerrymander. There's just less putty to squish. Yeah. You know, there's a big pre-processing step to process the raw census data. You can download all this data for free from the census. Best, free source of data ever, aside from maybe NASA. But Census Bureau has a special place in my heart. You don't need that much data to do this. It works out to, I downloaded 2.5 gigabytes of data for one state. But the part I actually needed was 16 megabytes. It's not large data. It's not complex data. It fits on this computer. It's fine. This is what measuring compactness looks like. Let's say all of these blocks with populations in them are assigned to one district. The center is very easy to find in this example. And then you measure the distance to each of those blocks and multiply the distance times the number of people in that block, divide by the total number of people, and thus you have a kind of average distance per person to the center of this district. So this is what I'm measuring for compactness. And because this map has that high population block off on the edge, that's a little less good. Maybe that block should be pushed off to the next district over. That's the kind of thing that I've been looking at. It is exactly that process. It's a big heuristic search that has a bunch of rules to squish things around and try and solve it. It's not entirely rigorous, but it seems to work. The big thing is the measure of goodness. I would like to see a law passed that just defines what is a measure of goodness for a compact districting map. Okay, open submission. Whoever submits the thing with the best score wins. We have decided this is the measure of what a good map is. Great. Let anyone figure out a solver. And when you run this heuristic search, you get a wiggly line where the solution eventually gets better. Sometimes it bounces out of local minima. Classic optimization problem.
How do you set the centers of the district?
That is open to the districts squish around as it's solving. So exactly that choice of, oh, I have a high population block off on my edge. Maybe the district next door wants it, and it just moves the assignment of that block. And then you measure, you draw a mapping, you measure where the center of it is, and then you do the calculation for how good is that district. Yep.
Do you start with the existing gerrymandered map, or do you start with grid?
I start with a random seed. Because of optimization and local minima, I start with 100 different random starts for each state. That's why it takes several months, because I'm doing hundreds of attempts to find the best map for a state. I'm going to switch gears for a moment to talk about a different nerdy election issue, which is why you should never pick just one. Your current ballot is a pick one ballot. And if you've ever been told, don't throw your vote away, this is the problem. The problem is that if you only have the choice to pick one, the system will devolve to only having two choices to pick between, because otherwise you're throwing your vote away. And people recognize that, and people just say, don't take other options seriously. So let's fix that. Let's have a better input to our election system, more data. I'm going to rank the choices. I'm going to say I have a first choice and a second choice and a third choice and so on. Or I'm going to rate each of the candidates on a scale of 1 to 10 or A through F or -10 to 10, or just a yes or no, like yes, this guy's okay, no, this one sucks. These are all options for how you could be voting beyond just picking one. And then there are algorithms for counting these ballots to get an answer. Because now that you have better data, you have options with what to do with that data and how to figure out, okay, this is what everyone said, and this is how we pick the best answer that makes the most people the happiest. You may have heard of Kenneth Arrow, who famously proved that there's no such thing as a perfect election system. Wrote a big book about it, got the Nobel Prize or something. I don't care. There is a best voting system, or at least a better voting system than we have now, and we can measure this and find a better system. So I'll present a couple of election systems. Instant runoff voting probably has the biggest mind share. It's out there. It's very easy to explain. You count up all the first choice votes. If no one has a majority, disqualify whoever got the fewest first choice votes. Those ballots get counted for their second choice vote. If you have to repeat, you just recount the ballot for whoever is the highest ranked, currently active choice on that ballot. And so, you know, I voted for Hank the Angry Drunken Dwarf and Princess Leia, and then John Kerry, so I guess I get John Kerry. The city of Burlington, Vermont used instant runoff voting to elect their mayor in 2006 and 2009. And they helpfully published all of the anonymized vote data so that we can just analyze all of the votes they did and do other analysis on it. It's great.
They vote for mayor every 3 years.
I guess so.
Vermont is special.
You may also note that it's been a while since
Yeah, no,
2009.
I assumed you were going to get to that.
Yeah. So there were a couple early rounds where some very minor candidates were eliminated. Here is the dramatic finish of the 2009 election for mayor in Burlington, Vermont. So Dan Smith, running in last, gets eliminated. You can see then that all of the counts go up as those votes are reallocated to their next preference. And then Andy Montrall is coming in last, and those votes get reallocated. And then finally, Bob Kiss comes in a dramatic finish. So that's how instant runoff voting works. Condorcet's method, named after a French guy from 100 years ago. Same ballot, right? You rank your choices first through whatever, and you count how many times A liked B better than how many times B liked A. So I vote for Hank the Angry Drunken Dwarf and Princess Leia and John Kerry. It means I like Princess Leia better than John Kerry. And so if more people like Princess Leia better than John Kerry than the other way around, we should elect Princess Leia. Democracy, okay. But because you have a rankings ballot, you have all of these pairs possible, so you can measure how many people liked A better than B and the other way around across all pairs of candidates. In a sports analogy, you could think of this as a round-robin tournament. Every candidate versus every other candidate, and the match score is how many people liked one more than the other. And usually there's an undefeated winner, but there are tiebreakers, just like in a round-robin tournament, to say like, well, which match was the weakest? Let's not count that one. And then you usually have an undefeated winner. So same election, Burlington, Vermont, 2009 mayor. And you can see that,
In the same order?
no.
Okay.
And you can see that 4,000 people liked Andy Montrall better than Bob Kiss, and 3,500 people liked Bob Kiss better than Andy Montrall.
So Bob Kiss has more fanatical fans.
So yeah, how did this happen? Bob Kiss has, a few, pretty high first choice votes. Andy Montrall has a huge second choice support, but maybe a lot of those second choice anti-Montrall votes also still like Andy Montrall better than Bob Kiss. Maybe they had Kurt Wright first, Andy Montrall second, Bob Kiss later, whatever. But because Andy Montrall had relatively few first choice votes, he wound up getting dropped from instant runoff voting. But when you break it down in this kind of matchup, you can see that more people liked Andy Montrall versus any other candidate. So if you'd had a head-to-head election with just two choices, Andy would have won handily.
So Andy's the winner.
Yes, Andy is the winner if you run the same ballots through the Condorcet algorithm because of the second choice vote. The instant runoff voting only looks at the first choice on your ballot right now. It doesn't look at the whole data that's available to it. And I think that's why it doesn't get as good an answer.
Sorry, which one won? The real election?
The real election, Bob Kiss won, who had pretty good first choice support. You know, if it had been a pick one vote, it probably would have gone to Kurt Wright, Kurt Wright really had the fanatics who really liked him, but nobody else liked him.
It's like he was one party here.
Right, you could say that Andy and Bob might have split a certain constituency.
Well, it seems also like Andy had the fewest people like him the least.
Yes.
People who disliked Kurt.
Right. Relatively few people hate Andy. Maybe that's an okay recommendation. So Burlington, Vermont used instant runoff vote in 2006 and 2009 and repealed it in 2010. Because a lot of people said, wait, it elected the wrong guy. And a majority of people said it elected the wrong guy, so they repealed it.
Seems like it did.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems right.
And now, as to your point about, you know, proportionality, another thing you can do with a rankings ballot is actual proportional representation, where the goal is that a 5% constituency gets 5% of the seats in your legislative body, or a 20% constituency gets 20% of the seats. And this is worked out through an algorithm called single transferable voting. It looks kind of like instant runoff voting, except that instead of requiring a majority to win, you only need, you know, however many seats to win. You'll need like, if there are 20 seats, you need a 20th of the vote. And for everyone who voted for that person, you know, if twice as many people as necessary voted for a specific candidate to get in, they each still get half a vote for their second choice candidate. So it's a very interesting system that I think works. And proportional representation techniques are still an active field of experimentation, and nobody's thought of anything conclusively better than single transferable vote yet.
For proportional representation to work in our Congress or something like that, wouldn't we have to get rid of districts entirely?
Yes. So my dream system, where we have both geographic and ideological representation, is a state legislature, a two-house state legislature. And the more numerous one, the assembly or house, state house, is the local district. And the fewer number, let's say you have 80 of one and 40 of the other. Take the 40, let's say they have 4-year terms alternating. So you're electing 20 of them in 1 year. 20 at large across the whole state, proportional representation. So there you have anybody who can get together 1/20th of the vote gets a seat. So the Green Party gets a seat, the Libertarian Party gets a seat, everyone gets a seat. And the STV algorithm, you are voting for candidates. It is not party proportional. You are voting for a specific person. You're not voting for my party, and then the party bosses decide who get elected. You're voting for candidates. And that's very valuable to me, because I'm kind of distrustful of the parties. The party machine does not always represent exactly what I want, even though I'm registered with a party, and their candidates are usually better than the alternative. Oh, is that still there? Yeah. Yeah, in the back.
Do you reckon if you have 20 people running, or 20 seats open, so like up to 60 people running, ranking?
So you don't have to rank them all. You could pick one and hope you get it. If you don't, your ballot gets thrown out because there was no further information to go on. If you rank 10, you're probably safe. You'll probably get something. So yeah, you only have to vote. You only have to rank as far as you care to pay attention to the election. there will probably be lots of helpful people handing you out little cards saying, please write this order in. You'll often get a slate of candidates who say, vote for all 10 of us in this order. It's a common strategy thing. Australia does this a lot in their ranked choice elections.
And for the U.S. House, you could do something like, if a state has 6 reps, you could have like an eastern block of 3 and a western block of 3 that do their own kind of internal. And if you want to like maintain some kind of combination of locality and also proportionality, that's also proposed.
Theoretically, yes, but there was a court challenge that threw this out some decades ago.
You probably still have to
So,
amend the Constitution.
yeah.
For either of these techniques, is there any way that a news station can give you a partial vote before all the results are in?
Yes. Condorcet's method is summable. If you have a partial answer, you can just add it to another partial answer. Instant runoff voting is not summable. You have to have the entire vote set so that you can run through all the votes and then run through all the votes again.
About the Vermont repealing the instant runoff. So a lot of people agreed that it elected the wrong guy because they thought Andy was the right person to elect.
Or they really didn't like the guy who did get elected or something. Yes. Yeah.
But like, was it widely discussed in public opinion that like, had they not had instant runoff, they would have gotten Kurt, which most people didn't want. So it may have elected the wrong guy, but so does single choice.
Yeah.
And they went back to single choice?
Yeah.
Right. So like, their argument about it electing the wrong guy should have been done in the light of single choice also elects the wrong guy, and Condorcet's method elects the right person in apparently most people's opinion.
Sure, but politics is not always a rational process.
Right.
What?
All you do is research. Right.
So, if you're just angry at the thing that did it wrong, chuck it.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
fixation.
Revert, roll back.
Do you think it'll be harder to get Burlington to adopt Condorcet moving forward because they had trouble with the previous one?
Yeah, I would expect that. I would expect, for as long as people remember that election of 2009, and people will have a bad taste in their mouth, for that kind, they will hear election reform and think, grr.
Right.
So, yes, I would prefer that any future reform does this right in the future. Maine passed instant runoff voting in the Valley Ballot Initiative this most recent November. We'll see how it goes. How many years until they have their own priority inversion. On the other hand, San Francisco has been electing their city councilors by instant runoff voting for many years now, but it's never mattered because the pick one candidate and the eventual winner were the same one. So instant runoff voting will fix something like the Bush-Gore-Nader problem, where you have a minor candidate splitter. But it doesn't fix when you actually have 3 kind of closely contested candidates.
You mentioned approval voting in past time. Spend more time.
It's very simple. Count up the number of yeses. Most yeses wins. It makes the ballot, again, it fixes the splitter problem where, the minor candidate voter who really wants to vote for their minor party they can also vote for the majority, the boring major party guy, and at least they're not hurting. They'll probably get something. They might not get their favorite, but they'll probably get something, and it fixes the splitter problem. But I don't think it'll actually improve our outcomes. What my hope is for ranked choice voting is that there are unrealized majorities of people who are prematurely compromising their own vote to say, oh, they'll never win, I'll just vote for the boring candidate. And I was very active in local politics in 2004, campaigning for someone who did not win the primary. And I have a habit of that. And I heard a lot of people say, oh yeah, I think he's great, but he's never going to win. He's too fringe, so I'm voting for the boring guy. And so that's part of the problem that I would like to solve, is I would like to give people the option of honestly voting their conscience, saying, yes, I really like this person better. Even if they're not going to win, I like them better. And I think sometimes we'll find out that enough people also actually like that person better. Or at least we'll get more information in the terms of like a really detailed public poll. You know, a really detailed public opinion poll that has all of these hidden features that we're not getting from pick one. You know, maybe it's not a 50% majority for that fringe candidate that you really like, but maybe it's 20. And maybe you didn't know that you had that large of an ally group with you.
So how do you push an election reform like this when typically the parties that are in a position to make the decision as to whether or not to implement them are the people who are benefiting from the current SKUs that exist?
Ballot initiative. That's what did it in Maine. There are some people trying to do it in Massachusetts. I need to find them and fix their technology, but yes.
Well, I mean, how do you get it so that because runoff is not the winner? We sort of lost it, right?
Exactly, right. I would like to do the right reform first so that it doesn't break it and get repealed and you know, make it harder to do real reform for the next 30 years. In the back?
I'm trying to think. Let's say there's 6 candidates running. I like sort of like top like 3 of them and really hate 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think, would I rank them like 1, 2, 3, and then purposely not vote for the last 3 so that if my 3 were eliminated, I wouldn't be giving new first place votes to them? Or, and that they're depriving you of the information of like, of those 3, which I like better? Or am I thinking about this wrong and I should be ranking them and not like leaving them on?
You should be ranking them because if it gets down to your 4th choice vote, you're already not getting your 1 through 3 vote. So the question is, okay, you didn't get what you wanted. Do you have anything to say about the lesser evil? And so, you know, imagine a rankings ballot across all of the primary candidates from all of the parties in this last presidential cycle. So, you know, you rank the ones from your party, you rank the ones from the other parties, and, you know, you still have something to say about, like, which of the other party is less horrible than the others. So, yeah, rank them all as much as you care about paying attention to all of those details.
Do you know who won the Andy Kurt-Bob race with this voting system?
Yeah, Andy would have won with Condorcet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, proportional one.
Oh, well, a proportional is for when you're picking several people, when you're picking a city council or a state legislature. Instant runoff voting is actually kind of the degenerate case of single transferable vote for when you're picking one person. But there's something about picking several people and not having the hard cutoff that makes STV less crazy than IRV.
So you're saying the Condorcet is the go-to?
Condorcet is the best thing, like in terms of simple and implementable and easy to understand for a pick one election. For a pick several election, like a city council or a state legislature, single transferable vote for proportional representation.
So aside from the name, Condorcet.
Right, sounds French. So
in this country, that's going to matter.
then in that case, call it a virtual round robin election.
I think it's still hard to explain to a general population, though.
I hope people will get the sports metaphor of a round robin tournament. Sports works in this country, right?
Yeah, but everybody's angry at the Big Ten.
So I think that because there are data sets for this, it's easier to run, but what about allocating points voting? And then I think that the problem there is that you start overthinking it and trying to game the system of like
Yes.
1 man 5 votes.
Right. Yeah, that's you know, somewhere back here I have the the list of, there are lots of algorithms. So yeah, you can have the like, you have 100 pennies, put pennies in each of box to vote for people until you're done. Yes, that is very susceptible to strategy. You know, that's one of the voting systems where voting honestly about how you actually think about the candidates might not work. There's another algorithm that continuously rebalances as you go. So you have a ratings ballot, rate each candidate on a scale of 1 to 10, and then normalize so that you have a magnitude 1 vector vote. And then cast that vote. And then, you know, have an instant runoff cycle where you disqualify the loser. And then renormalize all the votes without the loser so that you still have the same power of vote. And then, you know, disqualify the loser and repeat. So your pennies are constantly being reallocated in the proportion that you want towards your ends, so that, and you always have a full strength, full power vote. And I believe that solves the strategy part. It's much more complicated. I think you have to do it in software. Instant runoff voting and Condorcet can be hand counted. You know, a Condorcet election is this. You get a grid like this, and you know, put tallies in boxes as you read a ballot, and it'll take a while, but it is hand countable.
Are you saying it is summable?
Yes, and it's summable. So you can have a dozen people counting ballots into this, and then you just sum up these grids at the end, and then you have the result. So that makes this hand countable from paper ballots.
Is that what they did in Vermont?
No, and
With the one that they did use today, because like one of the questions I was going to ask is like the logistics of those machines we have today probably can't do any of this, right? So now you've got to buy a whole new system in order to just count the votes.
Kind of. I believe they used an optical scan system, so bubbling in things just the same as everything else. You just have a grid of bubbles so that you can vote 1 through 6 in front of each of your 6 candidates. So not a terrible user interface, a little more complicated, and it does use the optical scan technology, which can be pretty reliable. It also has a paper ballot for hand counting. So that pretty much works. And also, because they used a software system, I have their data. Yay.
Is there a situation in which Condorcet has a worse outcome than ranked choice?
Define worse.
This you define as better.
So I'm going to say no. Let me switch over to another chart I have. So I did simulations, creating random population, random candidates. They vote for people based on, you know, their random preference for who they like. And so this creates a close election because any candidate has, you know, within randomness, the same approval as all of the other candidates. And so I ran, you know, millions of simulated elections. And these are elections. This is a graph of elections with 10,000 voters. And the number of choices, the number of candidates in the election is along the x-axis. And the y-axis is how happy is the population with the result. They're simulated people. I know exactly what is in their hearts and how much they like the candidates. And they vote based on that. So down here at the bottom is random, where we just pick. If you pick a random candidate to win, then you get, on average, 0 happiness. That's a good test. This next line is pick 1. It gets worse as there are more candidates because it's just more likely to fracture badly. This next line is instant runoff voting. It works better, but notice it's below the rest of the pack. Everything else is better. Instant runoff voting is literally the worst, best option for election method algorithms we have. So that's why I really want to do something better. Some line at the top is just like, okay, if you cheat and just game the system and pick the best one, where's the ceiling of this? So that's what the top line is. Condorcet is this starred line. I think it's this line in here. So it's in the pack. It's doing okay.
Do you know of any countries that are using Scottish say or instant runoff to pick their major, their primary leader?
Australia uses instant runoff and single transferable vote heavily. New Zealand, the Irish Senate and the Cambridge City Council are elected by single transferable vote. So yeah, these things are out there. Condorcet is, I believe, most used by professional organizations. I forget if it's like the Association of Computing Machinery or the IEEE, but like one of that crowd uses it for their like officer elections.
How long has Australia been doing that?
They changed it recently, so like they had to have a big public media campaign about like how to vote. So they changed something recently, but I feel like they've been doing it for quite some time in general.
Are there any studies that they cite when they're doing those type of election styles that say like you're more likely to like the final candidate in terms of you felt like you got your second best pick?
I haven't seen that.
There have been a couple.
Yeah.
I think it was Texas had a bunch of school districts switch to some form for the school board or for the local school board. And I believe they like asked people, how happy are you with the school board? Like for a while before and a while after, and people seemed overall happier with the school board. That was 10 or 15 years ago. I don't know if it's still in existence or if it was rigorous analysis, but I could try to dig that up.
So back to the question I asked at the beginning, you aren't in favor in trying, or in addition to like the Wisconsin or Michigan, that the district should be proportional to what people want for their candidates.
Right.
Because I think you were saying that instead you want to go single distribution.
A single transferable vote,
So you want
proportional representation.
You want to do single transferable vote and just geographic.
Yeah.
But the problem is single transferable vote requires changing the constitution.
Not on a state level. If you're doing it for the state legislature, it's just a state thing. The state can do that. Fixing the US House is a harder problem, but state reforms happen quite frequently.
But if we want to fix the House,
Mm-hmm.
then we want to do something different than just geographic.
I think my first pass at fixing the House would be preventing gerrymandering.
Right.
Go with localized compact districts, and just prevent gerrymandering. That forced proportionality is messy. We could try it. I don't like it. It feels impure. It's a philosophical issue. Because I don't think that's what a district is for. On the other hand, it makes sense because maybe the question is really, what is a representative for? And the geographic role of representatives is just much less compelling now than it was when people were tied to the land more. So maybe geographical representation just doesn't make sense. And it doesn't really matter if you get your representative for your local issues, so much as like if the people in general are representative in proportion to one axis of what they care about being party. There may be other axes of what people care about that aren't getting proportionally represented, which is one of the things you get out of an STV system is that any constituency, doesn't have to be party ideology, any constituency that can get, for a 20-seat system, if you get a 20th of the population together for any particular cause, they can elect their representative. So it can be the local Jewish community or, what have you.
You mind if I address the group?
Oh, what do you have to say about ranked choice voting?
Yeah. So by the way, I am a member and as of last night, the technology chair for the Massachusetts Massachusetts group that's doing ranked choice voting advocacy. Just so you know, we have not officially decided on like instant runoff voting or endorse or anything. I would say that the default, based on the things that have passed recently, would be for instant runoff. But it's certainly in a the stage right now is we're raising money to fund polls to try to test out language specifics, try to find out like what voters in Massachusetts, what would resonate with them, and like what kind of system they would be willing to be up for. So if it's cool with you guys, I can send out to the code foo to a form where you can sort of sign up with your email to get updates on what's going on, or like if you're interested in volunteering. But there's like a lot of energy after the election, and we've been having working meetings, and things are like really getting off the ground. So if you're at all interested in like being involved, I really would welcome that. Seems like a lot of people here are super interested in this topic, given the turnout here, and you really do need to talk to the group, because I think you have a really compelling point. And I think that it's a tricky question about what is compelling and like what is like simple enough for users to understand, or for users.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely a usability,
exactly.
democracy
And,
usability.
People have some experience with like non-instant runoffs. That's one of the reasons why it's kind of easy. Some states have experience with runoff elections. But yeah, I hope everybody gets involved and like at least stays up to date, hears about it, and like tell your friends about nerdy election things.
I think we are out of time.